Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Osol.
Oh yes, absolutely beautiful Tuesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maupe Ogunyusuf.
Yeah, so, looking at those images of the police, and then you talk about pension. We already know that, look, it's not a good tale. Whenever you hear pension being highlighted in the news, most times, because, even before now, you hear the older citizens, senior citizens just dying, waiting in the queues. And now we see something similar. If nothing is done about it, who knows if that may end up being the case. And this has got to do with the police and the contributory pension scheme. Oh, dear.
Wow.
You'd have thought that with all of this, because, look, it takes... just trying to find the exact words. So when you look at these things, you keep wondering, how in the world will we allow this? Yeah, we have to say this as a society. We cannot. Because, look, this sends several messages across board. No need to go down memory lane history where they tell you how corruption started in civil service, how people started talking about, well, if this is how it's going to be, no way, I can't end up like this, so I have to do certain things. Even though they'll tell you, look, there's no reason for anything whatsoever, but can't afford to have this kind of imagery. And these are not just, these are policemen, retired policemen. And we know how we talk so much about ensuring that the police are, they behave themselves, conduct themselves properly on the road because they're committed to so much or with so much, and so they're expected to be of utmost behavior. And the other day we're talking about judiciary, how they needed to improve their lot while they're still in service. And now you talk about this one. Oh boy. Certainly not good.
Honestly, leaves a bad taste, not just in the mouth, several areas.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people watching this. Like you said, you reference current policemen. I know, they can't protest, right? So I imagine if they could protest, actually, imagine how many policemen, servant policemen and women you'll find on the streets protesting, various issues like perhaps their pay, working conditions, and the rest. And it's incidental, right? Coincidental, I should say. We had this conversation with Mr. Alobi just yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And he was wondering why can't, for example, an NNPC staff earn the same thing as a policeman. And while there might be a lot of reasons for that, but the question is why, really? Because when you look at the job of a policeman and the job of an NNPC, and I don't just want to, restrict this or seem like this is targeted at the NNPC. That was the example he gave. But why? Look at a law enforcement agent. They're essentially responsible for protecting lives. And you can't put a value to lives, right? Lives and property. Yes, property is valuable to an extent, but lives, they're responsible for that. So you imagine that there should be priority, as it were. And just like Chamberlain referenced, we just had a conversation about judges, even though some say it's basic salary, and they say, well, the allowances are way more than that. In fact, they reference why some lawyers abandon that just to jostle for judges, and they say, well, maybe they have it good. But look at the lawmakers as well. The legislature, they do quite well. I've not seen senators or reps protest about their salaries and
that would be the day.
Honestly, that would be the day. So you have the legislature sorted. The judiciary, some will tell you, they have it good to an extent, but this is part of the executive. You forget that the police is actually part of the executive, right?
They're everywhere, as a matter of fact. And they see what happens across board.
Absolutely.
And so they feel, look, if we see what goes on, and that's why some of them who go rogue, they just say, well, we know what's going on. We see what's happening. So these are some of the things that we can't gloss over and ensure that these things are actually addressed.
Yes, I know the reason, part of the reasons they're protesting is the fact that they were added to the contributory pension scheme, I think 5 years before they retired, so they didn't get enough time to contribute compared to other people who've probably contributed for more, and you understand that that's what they will share and give them per month. So it's a lot, but my own challenge is this: why can't we give as much priority to the police as we give to some of those other, strata or sectors that I have mentioned? Why?
Because in addition to that, they say, look, we want out. Yeah. Now, if you look at other security counterparts, maybe the military, the DSS, they're on a better scheme. So why didn't you put us on that same scheme? Because, I mean, it's the same security architecture we're part of. So even the ones that were in were not being paid, and so it's not looking good. So who's listening? Somebody should. Marpa?
Really, who's listening? I think that's a big question. We had Mr. Alobi here in the studio, and all you could hear him say when we talked about the security situation with regards to the police, the loudest thing that we heard him talk about was for policemen, the welfare of policemen in the force. Now, if this is the fate of policemen outside of the force, as per men who have since retired and, you know, are now outside the force, and they have to protest to get their pension, I mean, what are we telling those in the force? Those in the force are not even able to get, you know, a lot of the things which, according to Mr. Alobi, they used to get before now. Now, I know he's not the only one. Remember once when we had the former CP for Lagos, Mr. Owosheni, in the studio, and we're talking about security, and, you know, all of a sudden we talked about the police, and you saw how angry he got, you know, talking about how the Nigerian state has not done well by its police, that the police that we have today, they're miracle workers. The fact that, you know, they're standing on the roads and doing what they do, you know, it's a miracle by itself. So there are those who know what ought to be and, you know, feel very strongly about how, about the hand that the Nigerian state has dealt its own police. Yes, there's a history as to how, you know, the police hasn't really represented the Nigerian people. But over the years, there's been a gradual evolution. At least I know for a fact that I might not be standing here today, but for the fact that a policeman at some point in his life, you know, performed his responsibility as he ought to, protecting my family and saving us from armed robbers. And that was when I was really, really young, and it was a very dangerous situation. So at some point, we've seen a gradual evolution of our police force. There have been times when, yes, they have not carried on as they ought to, when they've been the oppressors, but many times they have been our protectors. And if we want them to continue, if we want to continue to attract more and more people that would carry the image of the force which we desire as a people, then we need to do better by our people. We need to do better by our police. We need to do better by our retirees. We cannot say that this is going to be the fate of those who have served for this country, those who have represented the state, because let's not get it twisted. The police, yes, much as they are the executive, they are part of the executive arm of government, they are the interface of the government with the people. When they wear that uniform, they represent the Nigerian state amongst the people. So we cannot say that for those who have, you know, represented the state, the Nigerian state among the people, protecting them and ensuring that there is law and order, this is going to be their fate when they have retired. That cannot be. I'm sincerely hoping that to whomever this protest is concerned, that by today we will be seeing a response, that, you know, they have taken note of the situation in Kaduna. They have seen this protest on the news. They should not tell us that they haven't seen it, or that they didn't watch the news, or that they're not aware, because these are the kind of stories that we're getting out these days. Very shameful indeed. Let us hope that the people who ought to be carrying this message of protest are taking it up and, you know, are looking for how to address it, that by today there will be a response to these people. Because this cannot continue to be the response of the Nigerian state to those who have worn its uniform, who have, you know, represented it amongst its people. I'm really hoping that that will not be the case, gentlemen, that today we will be seeing some actionable responses by those who are concerned.
Well, yeah, they've petitioned the Speaker and the President of the Senate, saying, look, that contributory pension scheme that was made in 2004, and so they then added them to that scheme, and they said, look, you can't make a law add us to the scheme when we're already 20-something years in the scheme, and they thought that shouldn't work for them. It's not supposed to take effect while they've already been in it. In fact, they say, according to their legal advisor, that it goes against, I think, Section 173, Sub 2 of the 1999 Constitution, saying it alters the existing the benefit system which they already have, alters the entire scheme, and so they think, no, this should not be the case. So we're hoping that the authorities will listen and address those concerns, because it's not exactly good to see the kinds of pictures from those who have served the country. Let's not forget that they put themselves in harm's way, whatever it is, they serve the country, and we should make it count for something. That said, let's take you through some of the dailies we've got for you here today. We'll start with The Guardian. High electricity costs overwhelm Southeast businesses. That's the lead one you've got right there. Consumers to pay more for electricity from January 2022. You know, just appears as though, just keep strangulating things, sectors, with reckless abandon. I said it comes across. So please, that's operative word. So, and then you see electricity now represents 80% production costs. Man, have highlighted this time and again, and so perhaps it bears repetition here. And then you see the other writer, 20% of industries in Akwa Ibom, Cross River, have shut down. Clearly, that's not what we want, because we barely have enough, barely. And then you see 20% being shut down. Households lament frequent hikes. Man calls for urgent intervention. Like I knew it was going to feature at some point. So
that's Manufacturers Association of Nigeria.
That's right.
Because people might say, what about a woman? If man is asking for
I'm hoping that they're not just listening, but they can read some of those in case they're moving around, around the house. So yes, very important to highlight that bit. And so, they've told us time and again that if we don't do something about our electricity in this country, that we may just be, holding ourselves back. Even though, the generation, we've done something about that. I think it's the transmission. I don't think we've privatized that much of that transmission.
Oh, yeah.
So there's the side security concern, saying, look, there's a huge part, but look, what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep talking about that without solving the challenges that we've got? I don't know. It's oh boy. Well, while like that, look at this at the bottom straight. Buhari arrives in New York to push vaccine equity at UNGA. Yeah, nice one there. Pro-anti-Buhari groups clash in New York. Showere's group mobilizes for fresh protest, lists 4 demands. Yoruba Nation agitators vow to hold historic protest on Friday, despite presidency's warning. So all of that you can find on the front page of The Guardian today.
Well, here's what you find on the front page of the Vanguard. Obasanjo to FG, accumulating debt for incoming government criminal. I mean, the former president made that statement last week, and it's still causing ripples. If you've not seen that, you can catch that on our YouTube page. We caught up with him in South Africa on the sidelines of an event in Durban, and he said this much and more. But take a look at the rider. Says borrowing for recurrent expenditure is folly. So more details on page 5. And right under that, you see Buhari arrives New York. And President Buhari, of course, is in New York ahead of the 76th session of UNGA. That's UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. Sit at home. Business owners lament lack of security as police assure intervention. Economic activities resuming in Owerri, Omaya, Abakaliki. So that's an update on the situation in the Southeast, page 9. There's also the talk about students who may have missed their exit examinations, their WAEC exit examinations, as to an arrangement being made for them. But ultimately, WAEC is meant to decide that. Don't forget, WAEC is West African, not just Nigeria. So all eyes on that one. Nigerians spend 2.2 trillion naira on petrol in 12 months. It's on page 19. So I really don't know where to place that, and I think it's important to understand the context of that one. Page 19 of the Vanguard will give you more details. And this one, Khan urges FG Kaduna to immortalize Melafia. That's a page 13 read. There's, of course, Mr. and Mrs. on the front page. Back page has sports for you. Falcons Bayana battle on final day. That's today, of course, in the Aisha Buhari Invitational. I wonder how that will swing. I know how it will swing, but we'll just wait to find out, right? Let's do it for the Vanguard newspaper. Okay.
Well, let's take a look at this one. Southern leaders disagree over 2023 presidency. Yeah, so politics leads the front page for the leadership newspapers. It's Igbo presidency or nothing, says Ohaneze. No, North must retain power. That's according to Northern Coalition. Afenifere Pandef faults NEF's population claim. That's a Northern Elders Forum population claim. Niger Delta activists back Southern governors. Oshibajo Salibol in 2023. That's attributed to Governor Sule. Nigeria's unity unshakable. That's according to the federal government. So you find all of these details on page 4 of the paper. It's a lot right here for you in terms of politics. But when it comes to governance, they also have something here. Kaduna, Ekiti, Anambra, Akwa Ibom lead in fiscal transparency. That's according to a report. And those are some of the things that, some of the measures of governance, not politics all the time. They have that detail for you on page 8. Northern governors mourn Melafia. It's page 11 read. Some story on security. Sokoto shuts down telecom network in 14 local government areas. And look at this. Monthly deadline. Institute directs firms to remit VAT to FRS. It's a page 8 read. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
We'll take a look at Daily Trust next. How Boko Haram crisis killed 300,000 children in Northeast. Young boys used as suicide bombers. Many died of malnutrition. 1 million others displaced in 12 years. Attacks on children must stop. UNICEF, ISWAP intensifies recruitment, Army says. Experts, government must restore civil authority in ungoverned territories. So, well, there you go. That's just what you find here. Oh yeah, look at this at the bottom strip. Plateau, Cross River, reject compulsory COVID vaccination. So that is developing, I tell you. But Cross River talking about compulsory vaccination, I thought at the time Cross River was insistent upon no such thing. And then there were many who thought about, well, they didn't have a lot of those centers. So how come there's an insistence on compulsory vaccination? That sounds like some old farce, I don't know.
Perhaps it's well, that's why it's good to get the proper
Yeah, you
context.
need to read the story.
Because I remember those days, right? It
Yeah.
was Cross River, Kogi. Right, I mean, I think things have since changed. Perhaps that's why you have this one. But of course, you might want to read more on that one.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's it for Daily Trust this morning.
Well, let's flip over to the front page of the Nigerian Tribune with this one. Clark to Buhari, naval base useless in Kano Desert. Says choice ill-conceived, waste of public fund. Page 8 for more details, but there's a quote actually on the front page, part of what he said. It's Chief Edwin Clark. So at least the front page gives you an insight into what you find on page 8. And under that, as Buhari attends UNGA, 2 Nigerian groups clash in New York over state of nation. And I recall Gloria reporting some of the events yesterday. And you saw those groups, essentially some in support of the government, some others against. So that's what you have on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. We'll definitely be giving you updates, blow-by-blow accounts, as they say, of the president's trip to New York right here on Channels Television. Southern Middle Belt Alliance slams Northern Elders Forum on North's plot to retain power. And you see, only Igbo presidency can rebuild the North, Ohaneze replies, NEF. So that debate continues, as it were, on top of the nameplate. Wike flays Rivers' exclusion from states to benefit from FG's planned new loans. Page 3 read, and just politics. APC battles crisis in 23 states. Peace panel targets Lagos, Ogun, Osun, 2 others. And you know, when you speak to politicians, they tell you, what crisis? Nah, this is a family affair. No crisis whatsoever. But the Nigerian Tribune is reporting crisis in 23 states. A lot of other stories for you on the front page. There's also on the back page, learned expressions with Ebonlo Adegborua, the dictatorship in Edo, part 2. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
New Telegraph has this one, heavy on politics this morning. 2023, PDP weighs options as Jonathan's touted defection rattles party. So it's a page 2 read for you. Will the former president defect? Well, you might want to see details on page 2 of the paper. Just don't rule out anything in politics. Oyinlola, Fayose, Jagede, Orbi, others may lose out a party chair race. 2 governors in advanced talks with APC. Ologbondiyan, ex-president's defection, still speculation. I think what is even worrying is that that sort of speculation could even come up. You know, I think that's what will be the biggest surprise. But the page 2 of the New Telegraph might give you insight as to what the lead story is about. PDP weighs options as Jonathan's touted defection rattles party. Look at this one. Confusion as Kano promotes primary 6 pupils to class 7. Is there a primary 7? You might want to read details on page 4. State failed to organize common entrance exam. Federal government to reconsider Southeast candidates who missed WASC. And 300,000 children killed in Northeast, says UNICEF. That's a very, very grim figure. 300,000 children. You know how many futures we've lost in just that one figure as a result of insecurity in the Northeast alone. Look at this one. NNPC records $219.75 million sales in May, posts 295.72 billion naira from petroleum products, records increase in pipeline vandalism. It's a page 5 read, and look at this. Reps demand details of seized Abacha assets, others. That is also on the front page for you. You have a number of other stories just beneath the nameplate. At last, Sanwo-Olu signs anti-grazing law. Clark, Kano Naval Base project, ill-conceived, says there must be limits to nepotism, parochialism. That's also there. And price increase, unfolding development cast doubts on inflation reports. You might be wondering why the picture of the former MPA DG is on the front page this morning in relation to that story, but you might want to read details on page 17 of the paper. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Well, take a look at Daily Times next, and their lead story, Buhari government borrows to invest in capital projects, not consume, ascribed to additional. Says FG not interested in naming, shaming sponsors of terrorism, but in prosecuting them. Stop reckless borrowing now, Atiku support group tells Buhari. So that's the big one on the front page of Daily Times this morning.
Let's quickly run through News Direct. You see this one, NNPC records 39.13% increase in pipeline vandalism. Another side to what you saw earlier. Crude oil, gas sales of $219.75 million in May. And just this one, finally, 2023 presidency will align with Governor Sule's position, Nasarawa Speaker. And you wonder what the governor's position is. Well, we did have it on Channels Television yesterday. You might catch up with that interview yet again on our YouTube page. That's Nigeria News Direct.
Yeah, and that ends a look at some of the dailies here today. Well, back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, we do know that the president has arrived in New York, and he's going to be at the UNGA, that's the General Assembly. And then we understand that some matters, including vaccine equity, but some things are going on already behind the scenes. So we do have our State House correspondent, Gloria Omezuke, who is on the trip, and so she joins us now to give us an update on what is going on. Hello, Gloria. Good morning. A very good morning, I might say. Really very early there. How you doing, Gloria?
I can say that again, Chamberlain. So it's about 2 a.m. right now. Of course. So thank you. The general debate begins today. The president will be attending the opening session in person at the UN headquarters. The attendance is definitely restrictive. The number of delegates have been scaled back to about as much as 4, as against what was tenable, in pre-pandemic era. So for many nations, the theme is quite apt and compelling because of the harrowing experience countries have gone through as a result of this pandemic. Only recently, the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres highlighted the need for a global vaccination plan, to particularly curb the virus, like he said, in the global south. Even though we know that the virus, is pervasive here, in the global north, as it were, essentially harping on the need to, double up production efforts and equitable distribution of vaccines. And this is an area even the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has given much emphasis to. Only last night she met with the president here in Manhattan and basically asked for more support in getting manufacturers of vaccines to invest in not just Nigeria, but on the continent. She categorically said that inequity, in access to vaccine is not acceptable. Now, there are interesting figures out there. A paltry 4%, even less, in Africa have been vaccinated, while about 50% in developed countries have received vaccination. So beyond the figures, what is really the implication, one would ask, for Africa and even the world? It's definitely not looking good. Every country knows that. This asymmetrical distribution is what essentially the United Nations is warring against. The solution, according to the WTA, the World Trade Organization, DG, insists last night, is that the manufacturing of vaccines should take precedence within the continent and the critical concentration, on trade as a way to, further pull investment. So she's hoping that in the next 2 to 3 years, there'll be significant changes, hopefully. According to her, I actually asked her that question, what sort of timeline is she looking at, to see this come to fruition? And she said in the next 2 to 3 years. That's the solution she has. And so she met with the president, asking him for extra support towards making this happen. I mean, critically, the world knows that this is where, this is pivotal to, ultimate recovery from the pandemic. And even as a matter of fact, the US president, she told us last night, has called for a conference on COVID-19 in Washington and has invited high-profile leaders to attend. So we'll probably be closely monitoring that. There'll be further commitments, hopefully by developed nations towards Africa, in general. Chamberlain?
To know that such consultations are happening at that level. And of course, as you said, we'll just wait to see how it trickles down in the coming days, months, and years. And I see that, as it stands, the president looks like he'll have a very busy schedule in the next few days in New York. Can you perhaps give us some highlights, something to at least look forward to regarding his schedule in New York?
Okay, so on Friday, before Friday, when he's built to address world leaders, where he'll be focusing on salient issues, climate change, issues of development, good governance, security. There will be the commemoration of the anniversary of the adoption of Durban Declaration and the Program of Action. Now, this 20-year commemoration is quite critical as well for Africa, because essentially this declaration came in the aftermath of a world conference on racism. And right now, even though there's a latest report by the High Commissioner back then, he's still harped on the need for, greater approaches towards handling racism. I mean, the systemic racism is still very much entrenched in countries. And as a matter of fact, xenophobia in South Africa, Nigerians have been affected and all of that. Why do we still have these issues? So this is what this Durban Declaration will focus on. I mean, the commemoration of this, and Nigeria is participating, will see to re-scrutinizing how countries have adhered largely to that program of action, basically. And then I also know that on Thursday, there'll be other meetings. There's a Food Systems Summit and the high-level dialogue on energy happening on the 24th. I think the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation will be representing the President on that occasion. So these are a couple of activities going to happen before Friday, when the President will address world leaders.
Well, I know that there are times that the president usually just speaks to Nigerians, after everything, those who are living abroad there. So do we know if any such thing is going to happen this time?
So because activities have largely been scaled back, I'm not quite sure that is on the program for this year. I know usually, like you said, Nigerians in diaspora, usually hold meetings with the president. This time around, I'm not sure that's on the schedule. We'll just wait and see if that happens before Friday. If not, definitely that is not going to happen as usual. Like, I mentioned earlier, activities have been scaled back, delegation have been scaled back, and the event is really highly restrictive. So we'll see not the usual, but a partial restoration of the person-to-person diplomacy that the UN is synonymous with.
If I could just put you on the spot here, Gloria, what for you is, highlights? What are you looking forward to, in this lineup of events, perhaps?
So the thing is that COVID-19 pandemic, the theme is quite apt. The theme is quite compelling. You find that most countries are jostling to come in person. Looking at over 80 countries, 80 heads of delegation or government coming in person. That's to show that there's this struggle to want to make their voices heard, especially for countries in the global south. And so aside the pandemic issues, I'm also looking at how this will shape future conversations and determine, how we sort out salient issues of insecurity, poverty, economy, and inequality. These are basically items that are on the SDG goals. And Nigeria might not have significantly achieved any of the objectives on that list. So I'm really looking forward to, fruitful conversations, cogent conversations that would take us, meaningfully, towards where we ought to be, at least by 2030, when that SDG agenda is supposed to come to fruition.
Nice. Thank you very much indeed, Gloria Umezuke, our State House correspondent. So you can just go ahead and rest as much as you can.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you.
So there you go. We'll be looking forward to the president addressing the UNGA, but very interesting to see that the president meeting up with the WTO DG,
yes,
who herself has spoken about how it's not good statistics that Nigeria, in fact, Africa, we'll import about over 90% of our vaccinations and pharmaceuticals. Africa depends largely on the West. And so she's been talking about how she wants to make Nigeria and South Africa vaccine production hubs in Africa. So who knows? I know that I think Egypt was talking about, is it working with China, producing some sort of vaccines there, but it will be good for them to address this.
And these are things that are doable, really. We've seen how much we have tried to reinvent a lot of things in the face of COVID. And what figures of vaccination worldwide? 4 billion or thereabout. And Africa is lagging way behind.
And you don't see Nigeria's figures in terms of our population and what we have.
And it's
very paltry.
It's a big challenge. And I know that one of the challenges is procuring these vaccines. In fact, you have countries that are stockpiling for a third jab. So I'm talking first jab, second jab, and they are making plans for even a third jab because they don't know what the future holds. Yeah. And it's understandable here.
And in some of those countries now, they are talking about how, the flu jabs you normally take. Now they want to combine both. So the flu jab will be made up of both the flu jab and the COVID vaccine jab. Flu jab, Spanish flu. You remember Spanish flu? They're still
just like a top-up, as it were, a booster.
So this may likely be a yearly thing.
Oh, yes.
So when they do that. So while many countries in Africa are struggling with the first jab, first dose. So Who knows? It's a conversation that we will keep having as we progress. But we'll be back in a moment to switch on to our next subject matter. Take a look at this.
Well, that's the matter into which we're sinking our teeth this morning. The VAT controversy, value-added tax, continues even as the matter is in court. Do not forget that the River State government, has approached the Federal High Court in River State, got judgment in your favor with regards to the VAT. The FIRS has since appealed. The court is hearing the appeal, but it would seem in a counter move, the River State government has taken the matter to the Supreme Court for determination. The matter is still being, so the matter is being heard somewhat at the Court of Appeal on the grounds upon which it was heard in the Federal High Court in River State. And then the Supreme Court also has the same matter before it. But we're going to be asking the practitioners, tax practitioners, how they view this matter. Joining us this morning is Mr. Samuel Agbeluyi, who is the Vice President of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, your institute hasn't been quiet. This morning, you were quoted in the dailies as having said that indeed status quo is what the Court of Appeal has said should happen, and so you've told your members or those who should pay tax to remit their VAT to the federal government. Is that correct?
Exactly, that's correct. That is our position. The rulings of the Court of Appeal is that the parties to the issue should maintain status quo. And what is the status quo? What have we brought to the court? What is the matter in issue? The matter in issue is who should collect VAT, and who was collecting before now, Federal Inland Revenue Service. So if you say no state has collected VAT, so if FRS has been the agency collecting VAT across the country, so the status quo is that FRS will continue to collect.
Is that on the advice of your lawyers?
It's both the advice of our lawyers and the stand of the institute. Because when you say maintain status quo, the essence of maintain status quo is that before we determine the substantive issue, can we preserve the rest? What is the rest in this case? What is the matter in issue? And the matter in issue is simply who should collect VAT. Who has been collecting? Federal Inland Revenue has been collecting. State has never collected. So if we should maintain the status quo is that FRS should collect pending the determination of the case in either Court of Appeal or Supreme Court.
It's a pretty tough one for practitioners because as it stands right now, a number of states, 2 states at least that we know, have finally passed their VAT laws. In the wake of the judgment obtained by the River State, given by the Federal High Court in River State in favor of the River State government, they went ahead to enact a law, empowering them to collect VAT. And that was before the matter was taken to the Court of Appeal. So isn't there a problem? Do you see a cog in the wheel of the directive which you have given to your members?
No. If anything, we have in tax administration, there should be certainty. And in any case, in any country, in any society, there should be certainty. And for VAT, as important as it is, a tax type that gave the country 1.5 trillion in 2020, we can't afford to be trivial with it. Now, just like I said before, who has been collecting? There's no ambiguity. FRS has been collecting. So, and if we have nothing against, we are not standing for the state, neither are we standing for the federal government. But we need certainty. And the business community are going through a lot of issues. So the least we can do is to assist them, remove the crisis, remove the hostility in the environment. And today is the 21st day of the month of September. This is the last day that, by law, August return, VAT for August must be paid, must get in today. By law, anything paid tomorrow will attract penalty and interest. So the court, if you pay to Federal Inland Revenue as we speak, you have the judgment of the court backing you. And in order to remove the ambiguity or the anxiety or the confusion within the system, we have directed our members, about 25,000 members who are practicing across the country, to stick to what the law says. In any case, whether it is VAT or any other thing, taxation is essentially law. And we must be guided by law. And Nigeria is not a banana republic. If, for example, I don't want to draw into the issue, but if, for example, FRA has been collecting since 93-94, then I think it wouldn't amount to any big damage if we wait for a month or two for the court to adjudicate, so that the cost will be clear for everybody to know.
Okay. I'm just wondering now, first and foremost, you just mentioned how important the VAT collection now is. It has grown into the trillions, thereby causing not just an upheaval in law, but also a political upheaval of some sort. Now, some people will say that this was predicted. We saw this coming, so to speak, because it's not the first time that a state government was attempting to challenge the federal government with regards to VAT. Is it something that your institute saw coming and tried to intervene in terms of, the uproar it could cause, the destabilization it could cause for your members, and how this was now becoming an important line item in terms of tax, an important tax component, which was, going to be a beautiful source of revenue. VAT was becoming a beautiful bride. Looking at what was happening with VAT, did you see this coming, and did you try to, draw the attention of stakeholders to it to see how it could be addressed before it went to the courts?
Thank you. I like your phrase, important line item. We've been on this for quite some time, and I will elaborate more. I know before 2015, 2010, we have seen this coming. You can't be a country like Nigeria and you rely on a monoproduct to finance your economy. In 2013, precisely in Calabar, our theme of the conference was on sustainable revenue generation for the country. And subsequently, we'll be doing this. We come out with a communique at the end of each conference, and we send to the stakeholders, the government and all the stakeholders. So we've seen this coming, and we know there will always be pressure on taxation when the oil ceases. And of course, what is coming from oil is almost nothing now. So everybody is looking at FRS, or the State Internal Revenue Services, to bail us out. So it is not out of place. We expected this, that there will come a time whereby people will be more agitated. People will stay focused more on tax revenue. And of course, it's a good development. It will get bad before it gets good, if I can say that. But at the end of the day, whatever the court adjudicates, we will follow. But again, we are not going to be unmindful of the political aspect. I like an aspect of what Rivers State governor said in your intro. There may be the need to sit down, because federal government is collecting now. There are some shortcomings. Should the state start collecting tomorrow, there are also a kind of shortcoming. I can list 1, 2, 3, 4, although I don't want to go into that. So whichever way it goes, there should be sitting down together. And I think we should, permit my language now, we should get serious as a country. This is an important thing, and we can always talk to ourselves. We shouldn't talk at each other. We should communicate properly. Once the communication is good and right, we can educate ourselves and take the best decision in the interest of the country. Because 6% tax revenue to GDP is awful. Awful even by West African standards. So why So, and we also need to introduce sense of urgency. Nigerians are suffering, and we can do better, and we have the capacity to do better. So I would rather we do a lot of talk intelligently, and we communicate properly amongst ourselves so that there will be solutions to this. Nigeria can be greater. For how long do we continue to borrow?
It's a big question in terms of how long we continue to borrow. I'm interested in that talk which you say you had in 2013 about how tax was going to become an important component. But even within the tax basket itself, you know, I do not know whether you were able to pinpoint the fact that VAT was going to become an even more contentious one. That's what I'm trying to drive at.
Okay.
As to whether or not you saw, because Lagos state government had already given a hint when it went to court. Was it something that you thought another state in future could also challenge? Lagos State stepped back for whatever reason after they were told that they shouldn't have sued, not even at the State High Court, but also not suing the proper person, so to speak. Was it something that the CITN already saw and, you know, was already finding ways, especially when you look at the fact that when we look at pros and cons right now of states collecting and federal government collecting, you know, some of your members have said, oh, look, this could result in double taxation. There could be, you know, there could be issues here and there, so to speak. The advantages and the disadvantages for every side of the argument that you look at. But did you see this enough to be able to say, you look, this could happen. States could go to court to challenge this. And, you know, if they do win, this is going to be the implication. Is it possible to have a conversation, you know, ahead of that, so to speak? That's the question I'm asking you.
Okay, let me step backward a little bit. I think about 4 years ago, the federal government reviewed the national tax policy, and the philosophy behind the new national tax policy is to move away from direct tax to indirect tax, and VAT falls under the indirect tax, and that is VAT is essentially consumption tax. And it's about lifestyle. It's about what to do. You can afford not to pay if you regulate your activities. So when the new national tax policy came on board, the essence is to focus on that, and we participated actively in the existing national tax policy. But of course, the aspect of who should collect or who should not collect is not, we can even decide. I just said law now, and we have a National Assembly that needs to play a major role here. We can decide to say, federal government don't collect company income tax again. Once that is our consensus, and we think that through, then that will become the law, and that will become what we implement. So this is within the realm of policy formulation. Policy formulation in tax leads to law. So once the policy is gotten right, then of course, you enact the law, then the implementation takes place. That's where you have the implementation, which is the revenue agency. It's actually the last leg of the tax system, which we call the tax policy, the tax law, and the tax administration. So all we need to look at is to say, okay, what do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? Beyond the revenue aspect of taxation, we also use taxation to direct and redirect economy. So should we think of certain aspects tomorrow, a part of growth? We use taxation to achieve that. I'll give you an example. Stamp duty. We have advocated over and over again that the state will not require bailout from federal government if stamp duty is properly administered in this country. But it's about VAT today. We have also informed our leaders. Property tax is another aspect where you can get money. But we are talking about VAT today, and we are also advising them on stamp duty. We are talking about property tax. Nobody is listening. But because somebody has raised the issue of VAT, everybody is moving to VAT. When we are done with this, we go to sleep again. But over and over again, it has been the responsibility of our institute that we've been highlighting this to the stakeholders.
Well, it looks like it just heard you because because stamp duty, we've seen the attorneys general or the attorney generals of the 36 states now, writing to the attorney general of the federation with regards to stamp duty. But we will come back and we'll continue that conversation after this break. Please stay with us.
Well, yes, we're continuing this conversation about the VAT matter. But we do have Mr. Kayode Ajulo, who is a legal practitioner, to give us his thoughts, his perspectives on this matter. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, we do know that some days ago, I think the organized private sector did say that they wanted clarity on the matter. I think it was before September 21. But at the moment, you still have some people who feel, look, what do? Do we wait until the entire process is over and done with in the courts, or what? What's your impression of what's going on? It again from the start. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you now.
What the party should do in view of the court's ruling, that is the order by the Court of Appeal. And it is so clear. The court is so emphatic to say that the parties should maintain status quo ante bellum. We have two types of status quo from understanding. One is status quo ante bellum, another one is status quo. Status quo ante bellum, simply stated, is all about it should be that the situation should be before the war starts. And what it means that before the commencement of even the issue. And from that interpretation, what the court is saying is that before even coming to the court, before you start fighting, the situation should remain as it is. And that's, and I don't think there is no any other interpretation for anybody to deceive itself. Those that need to pay tax know where the tax should be paid to, pending when the courts will grant the final judgment. We quickly make the final decision. And as it is, the matter is moving fast. And I know because this is tax issue, no court will sleep over it. And I'm very sure in the next few days, everything will soon be over. And every party will know exactly where the issue is, and the old issue will be resolved immediately.
So whether or not states have signed any of those laws at the moment, it cannot be implemented until this judgment is over and done with.
I want to believe that since even I believe the states happen to be of the processing court, and they are already parties. And once the matter is before the court, it is expected that both parties need to maintain that status quo. And like I said, the courts, I'm sure they are aware of the implication of the importance of this issue, this tax matter, and I'm sure the whole issue will be dispensed with immediately.
So if you could just, move through the different, the highlights of this whole event. So Rivers approached the court, the Federal High Court, and the judgment was given in favor of the state. So at that point, I know that FIRS was saying maintain status quo at that point. So when Rivers got that judgment in its favor, enacted a law, what was the fate, or who were the companies or organizations meant to pay VAT to?
Well, the narration has to put in proper perspective. The narration here is mind you, even when you are in Supreme Court, when you are in Court of Appeal or Supreme Court, it is continuation of the issue. What is the issue? The beginning of the issue here is that Federal Inland Revenue has been collecting the taxes, that's VAT, and the state thinks otherwise, and the state happened to approach the court where the judgment has been given to the state, and again the state has already enacted law to say to the effect that that issue of VAT will be superintended, will be monitored, and will be managed by the state government. Now, with this order of the court that status quo ante bellum has to be maintained, it is wise, it is expected that all parties need to maintain that status quo ante bellum, because I'm very sure the courts will still make decision over other issues as presented by the...
Well, Mr. Ajilo, I understand. I'm referring to the judgment, after that judgment at the Federal High Court in Rivers, which ruled in favor of Rivers State in the collection, and then Rivers State followed up with that law. Yes, Lagos State has also done the same. But I'm saying that in that period, because the FIRS kept saying that, well, maintain status quo, the VAT should still be paid to us. So was that right for the FIRS? And I'm not talking about, in fact, they asked for a stay of execution, and the court did not grant it at that time at the Federal High Court. So in that period, and FIRS kept saying, pay to us. Was that right? Were people meant to pay to the FIRS or the state?
That it is right. Particularly, mind you, the judgment that has been given to the River State as it is before the judgment has been given to the River State as it is now on appeal. That means that there is the issue. Irrespective of the fact that I agree into two with the River State that this is the position of the law, it is still expected that it must be court order, particularly when the rest has to be maintained. And if the court in his infinite wisdom can make such ruling that antebellum has to be, status quo antebellum has to be maintained, so be it.
Mr. Ajilo, you're referring to the appeal court.
Yes.
And that's the recent one. I'm referring to the Federal High Court in Rivers. And I think you've spoken about this as well. And I just want to be sure, are you changing your position? Are you saying there was never a point where the court said pay to Rivers and not the FIRS? Or
yes, you're
Rivers
right.
collected?
Remember, my position right from the beginning is that it has to be paid to the Rivers. And as at that time, we are here to get this extant ruling, that is the order of the Court of Appeal, which is today every lawyer, what is sought, must agree to, must obey. As at the time I made that position, it's so clear that we are here to have any order that says status quo antebellum has to be maintained. And as at that time, what we have is the judgment given to Rivers State, which is subsisting. But immediately it is on appeal, and the appeal has made a pronouncement on it that status quo antebellum has to be maintained. It is expected, if it is status quo antebellum, that is before the issue arose, before the war starts, and it is to revert back. And like I said, it is an interim. It is more or less a tenuous order, which is not permanent, which is not static, which may even be changed, today. But as long as that order is on, everybody needs, it is imperative that it is obeyed. It is imperative that it is followed.
So from the look of things now, it is the case that is at the Supreme Court that, you think that will be given that accelerated hearing, and thereafter it will be sorted out.
Exactly. As it is, that's why I said, since the party, the jurisdiction now has already moved to the Supreme Court, I'm very sure, because of the nature of this matter, it has to be dispensed with immediately. It has to be dispensed with.
All right, and thank you very much indeed for your perspective this morning, Mr. Kaide Ajilo, legal practitioner. All right.
Okay, so let's take this back to Abuja with Mr. Gbelui. And I would like to follow up on a question Mark raised earlier regarding the history. I mean, looking back in time. And I would say that the CITN has been really present at the very inception, even before the inception of the transition from sales tax to VAT. I mean, the institution was chartered by that Act of 1992. That's Act number 76 of 1992, which is now the CITN Act 2004. So that's a year before we had that transition. And clearly you saw all of this happening. Did you play any role in that transition? Did you see, and I'm taking that back to 1992, prior 2013, which you have referenced. So what role did you play, or did the CITN play in all of this? Did you see that lacuna, as it were, or did you just think, well, it's quite clear? I mean, what role did you play, and did you see this coming as far back as then?
Thank you very much. I know all the way we've been relating with stakeholders as to the best that should be done concerning tax revenue generation in the country. There have been many fashions as to, I'm sure you know 1992 is a long time ago now, but there have been many fashions as to the contribution, the intention of the drafter of VAT decree, now the VAT law, as to who should collect and who should not collect. Mind you, sales tax was in operation before VAT law came on board, and sales tax has been primarily the affair of the state. But the implementation and the coming on board of VAT law has placed the administration of that particular law in the hand of VAT. It's one thing at the point of coming up with a law to make your suggestion. It's another thing to see the final copy coming out the way it's coming. I'll give you an example. The federal government has done very well by giving us Finance Act. That started about 2 years ago, 2019, 2020. The one for 2022 is in preparation. This position of CITN is that minimum tax that the taxpayers are made to pay when they don't have profit to declare should be removed. Because in the understanding and in the belief of CITN, minimum tax payment is a capital erosion. I've done my business for the past 12 months. I've not been able to make money. But despite that, you ask me to pay minimum tax. That is not the position of CITN, but that is the position of the law today. And we will keep on agitating in favor of the system, not just the taxpayer, but the system generally. Because when you are fair in your dealings with people, people tend to trust you more. So the way we have been contributing then, I've just brought you to the recent that we've been contributing. But you can advise, but the advice will not be taken all the time. But what we keep on doing is to keep on pressing to make sure that the system is properly sanitized.
So just winding down now, I'm thinking of combining two questions for you, but let me just try. So I wonder through this whole process, how you've been receiving things. I recall first when that judgment first came, you said you wanted to study the certified true copy and get some legal advice in terms of, what to do and what not to do. And you have made your position clear now. So I wonder, was there any time where you were thinking, okay, well, based on this judgment and based on the law that have been enacted in Rivers and Lagos, perhaps these, the VAT should be remitted to the state? Was there any time that you made that decision in the light of the information and the judgment you had?
Like I responded to the question, your question is similar to what my query raised earlier. The best thing an institute like CITN can do is to be neutral and be fair to all parties. Once there is fairness, the system will run properly. When the judgment came from Federal Court, Port Harcourt, there was we wouldn't respond. You are in the main media house, and you don't respond to social media thing. So we waited for certified true copy. And about when we got the certified true copy, the appeal came. and the appeal put things in perspective. And I'm happy with the contribution from Mr. Ajulo also, which is similar to what CIT is doing. We can do without the confusion, no matter the way, the sentiment around it, we can do without the confusion, so that we need a stable system. The investors are watching the country, and somebody must have his head properly in order to ensure that we don't give that kind of impression that if you take your money to Africa or to Nigeria to invest, you are not going to be sure of what happens. Anything can happen at any time. So
I think indeed that's an important point to raise, as you have raised.
And we are sticking to the outcome of the judgments from either from Federal High Court, Port Harcourt, and Court of Appeal.
Right. So on the other side, the second part of the question, quickly. So do you see this as a win-win situation, whichever way it swings, or a win-lose situation? And I'm talking for not just states and federal government, for states and other states, because it's looking like, some states are for collection of VAT by states. Some other states are for collection of VAT by the FIRS and SHED. Is this going to be a win-win situation, a win-lose situation? How do you see things playing out?
Well, the Institute will work to ensure that we have win-win situation, and we can achieve that. But if not properly handled, it can be win-lose situation, because we'll be talking about capacity. We'll be talking about taxation is technical, and VAT particularly is multi-layer tax type, and the nature of the country, 36 states in the country. Don't forget, Adam Smith talk about economy of collection of taxes, even way back. So all this we need to put together, and it's a whole lot of work. But our focus is to make sure that it's a win-win situation, and it is achievable. And we have the capacity. Nigeria has the capacity to make this thing win-win situation. All we just need is the good intention to do that. We can make it win-win situation.
So I'm just wondering now, what do you think is going to, excuse me, what do you think is going to happen if eventually, whichever way the courts rule, but if this is done in favor of the state, how do you think it's going to impact your organization? Are you already projecting to the outcomes, the possible outcomes of the matters in court?
The state will have a lot of work to do. One, there must be a lot of capacity building. That is not been there. Maybe about 3-4 states can proudly say, okay, now that 6 months, we take off properly. So capacity building. And whether we are talking about VAT or other tax type, the state internal revenue services, please permit me to mention this, needs to give autonomy to the various internal revenue services, that the state government. The era of appointing somebody from your political party or from your zone to be the chairman, that is a very important office. Everybody is talking about what FRS is doing today. FRS is not just doing magic. FRS has autonomy, and they have 4% cost of collection. So they can hire fantastic staff, skilled staff from anywhere, outside the country, within the country. They can fire. So once you have that discretion and you are giving target, you will perform. But the state, we have a lot to do. I know it is possible, but it is not just to wish. You bring somebody without background in taxation, in finance, to run your internal revenue services. I have states in this country that, as we speak, they don't have substantive revenue chairmen for 3 months, 6 months, and you are in the business of collecting revenue in this year 2021. That's not a serious thing to discuss. So should it go to the state, there be need to do a lot of work. So, and the governor, you make your life better. This is an advice, an appeal to them. You make your life better if you do the right thing. Don't politicize the office of the chairman of State Internal Revenue Service. FRS is looking beautiful now because the federal government has made it so.
Well, I think it's a very good advice to give, and I'm sure that states will start preparing themselves for the work that lies ahead, especially in the light of the word that oil, the revenue from oil is not looking as pretty as it used to look, and taxation, it would seem, is now the new bride. But we'll see how matters eventually pan out on that one. We have to thank you so much for coming on behalf of yourself and your institute this morning. Mr. Samuel Agbelu is the Vice President of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break at this point. We will come back and we'll have our teeth in that matter of inoculation. Don't forget our correspondent, Gloria Imuzuke, brought us up to speed with regards to what the president will be asking for. But there are other issues, it would seem, standing in the way of achieving more than 4% for Africa. We'll sink our teeth into some of those when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Well, yes, we're just going to get perspectives from Benin concerning what is playing out in Edo State. And we did reach out to the government enforcement team who featured in that report, but there's no response, so they are not on the show. But we do have Mr. Kola Etokbayi, who is a rights activist, joining us from our studios in Benin. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, a lot clearly is going on, but what is the current situation about the vaccine mandate in the state?
Good morning, my brother. Good morning, Lagos. As you are fully aware that Edo State government has made it mandatory for Edo people to get vaccinated. It is coercing workers to that effect. While some people are saying that, people like yours sincerely share that sentiment that my body is my right. And as such, the government has no right to force me to take vaccine. When the coronavirus occurred in 2019, when it was very rampant, there was COVID-19 palliative for the people. Government did not make the distribution of the palliative mandatory. Why is the government now making the vaccine mandatory? They store the palliative in medical store road, perishable items, perished. It was then, the palliative was not mandatory then. Why is it that the Edo State government is now forcing people to take vaccine? There is a restraining order by a court of competent jurisdiction to that
part. But some comments from the enforcement officer, Mr. Haruna Yusuf, is quoted to have said that the government is not forcing people about this vaccine. How do you reconcile that?
That is, they are trying to escape from the truth. Government is not forcing people to take the vaccine, but on that day, I think that it was very rampant that workers were restricted to access government facility. Is that not a mandatory vaccination? Is that not a situation whereby you are forcing the people to take vaccine? They should tell us the truth. We don't know the secret behind this forced or mandatory vaccination. My body is my right. Let Edo State government respect that the court order. There is a restraining order to that effect from court of competent jurisdiction in Rivers State.
Speaking about that court matter, we thought that it was on the 31st of August an ex-parte. Does it still subsist?
Yes. We are supposed to maintain a status quo, more so that we have not gotten any counter order to that effect. Maybe Edo State government went to other court to get another order to counter the first order, like what is rampant. When a court in a federal court in Rivers State will give an order, Another court in Zamfara State will give a counter order. You understand? But there is nothing like that. We expect parties to maintain status quo ante bellum, not by forcing people to take the vaccine. And because of that, people are absolutely restless. Putting into perspective the negative news we hear about the vaccine.
So,
they will
but
tell you a politician in Edo State took the vaccine after a few days he died. They will not tell you. They will not tell you that.
Okay, we'll get medical experts to speak on that. But what about what they say that, well, you got an ex-party and it subsists for 2 weeks and thereafter they then proceed with whatever it is that they intend to do?
Yes, you are right. You are right, my brother. There is an ex parte motion to that effect. But what about those people that are not, they don't know the meaning of ex parte motion? They are not conscious of what is ex parte motion. What we are saying is that let the people decide whether to take vaccine or not, whether there is an ex parte motion or not. Someone like me, you cannot force me. Even in your house, when your children are not feeling well, you pet them to take medicine. We expected Edo State government to carry out an evangelism to convince the people beyond all reasonable doubt of the positive effect of taking the vaccine, not by coercing the people as if we are living in a colonial era. That is our agitation. That is why some of us are coming out to agitate. It is our fundamental human right. You saw the restriction of the fundamental human right of workers accessing government facility. The right to freedom of movement is guaranteed by the law. The right to freedom of association and peaceful assembly is guaranteed by the law. The Edo State government should not be seen to be obeying court order that favors him and disobey court order that did not favor him. What is so special about this COVID-19 vaccination? Edo State government should force kidnappers to quit Benin Auchi Road. They should force kidnappers to quit Benin Lagos Road. As it is today, our people find it difficult to access Ekpoma. They pass through Benin Agbo Road, and Benin Agbo Road is no longer safe. On Friday, a policeman was kidnapped there. 1 year, close to 1 year into Edo State, into this the second term of my amiable governor,
just so you have raised some important issues. Yes, outside of the conversation we're discussing, which is COVID-19 vaccines, but yes, also important issues you have raised. But so there are different ways to look at this. Pardon me, just a moment. Just a moment, Mr. Edokbai. Let me land on that question. Thank you. So there are different ways to look at this. There's the medical perspective. You have raised the law, the legal perspective. I just want to be clear. Are you agreeing that indeed the ex parte order has, or the injunction has expired after September the 10th? Are you indeed saying that, yes, it has expired and then the government can go ahead, but still people have a right to say, this is what I want? Are you indeed agreeing that ex parte order has expired?
That is what we are saying. It is my fundamental human right, whether there is an ex parte order or not. But let me decide.
Okay, I get it now. I just wanted to clear that part. So you say that you agree. But so let's talk about this from the medical perspective and even bring in law. So you say your body is your right. Indeed. I mean, they're fundamental human rights. But, I mean, you know too well that saying, let me just say that says your right stops where the right of another person starts. So if you say your body is indeed your right, and we're in a pandemic situation, as it were, and I mean, medical evidence has pointed to the potency of vaccines, saying that the benefits far outweigh the risks, which have been referenced time and again. So you do understand that, I mean, taking the vaccine from a medical perspective, I mean, reduces the risk of transmitting and, you know, even getting hospitalized, as it were. So in the light of that, don't you think your right to your body has its own limits when it now gets to your rights regarding the other person's right as well?
Thank you very much, my brother. That is why I said the government of Edo State needs to conscientize the people. Tell them the importance, the efficacy of taking this vaccine. The time my friend Aruna is using to deprive people of their fundamental human rights and rights to movement, that time should have been used to peregrinate to the market, to educate them, to conscientize them on the need for them to take the vaccine. So that at the end of the people will now form opinion that it is mandatory for me to take vaccine. You don't even force people to take polio vaccine. When it is time, our children take polio vaccine because of the consciousness, because of the education, because of the enlightenment. That is what we are talking about.
As we wind down on
instead
this,
of coercing the people.
okay, so two things. Could you tell us, are you completely against being vaccinated, or you do not want to be forced to take it and you want to take it at your own time?
Yes, I want to take it. I want to take it willingly. I should not be coerced. I'm a mature person. I should not be coerced. So even in Europe countries where the vaccine had in fact killed so many people, health workers are even protesting. In Greece, a few weeks ago, health workers protest against mandatory vaccination. Now their party is their right. We should not be coerced. The government, the state government should enlighten the people on the need for them to take this vaccine instead of forcing the people. A lot of people are skeptical on the ground that when the COVID-19 palliative arrived at those states, people were not forced. Why is it that Edo State government is now forcing people to take this vaccine? There are a lot of negative news.
You know, Mr. Adebayo, like a lot of other people, a lot of other Nigerians, it's understandable that grouse on palliatives and the sharing of palliatives. I mean, a lot of people look back at what happened and they're not happy. But, you know, that was then, and definitely a lot of restitution still needs to be made to win the trust of people back and ensure that we fight this together. And it's interesting you referenced that you're not against vaccine, you're not, you know, skeptic when it comes to COVID-19. So let me ask you this. I mean, the government has said that people can work from home in the pending that period. And they say that, well, they're not forcing. They're only saying if you want to work on site, you need to get the vaccine so you don't, you know, spread the virus, as it were. So in terms of forcing people, has the government said the average citizen, the everyday citizen in Edo State must be vaccinated, else they will not maybe go out, they have to stay indoors? Have you ever heard that come out of government?
No, that's even though that is not the position of Edo State government. What the Edo State government said is that when you are not vaccinated, you will not access government offices, even the churches. You will not have that access to the mosque. You don't have access to the church. You will not even have access to the bank. Somebody called me a few days ago that he went to one of the new generation banks in Edo State, that it was restricted. Is that not an indirect way of forcing everybody to take the vaccine?
All right.
It is.
All right, Mr. Adebayo.
Let us not.
We need to anchor at this point. Kola Adebayo is an activist, and so he's trying to enforce certain rights about the vaccine mandates in Edo State. And we did reach out to the enforcement authorities in Edo State, and they did not respond to the messages. But we'll keep trying and hope to get their perspective on the matter moving forward. But still talking about this vaccine, anti-vaxxers, and the surrounding attendant circumstances. We've got Dr. Nesochi Okeke-Igbokwe, who is a physician and a health expert. He joins us via Zoom from New York. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, as a physician, how does that sound to you when you hear this kinds of narrative making the rounds, vaccine mandate?
Yes. Good morning, and thank you for having me. So as a physician, I am hearing a lot of what your guest was talking about from even my patients here in the States. Here's the concern that patients have. I think the issue is not having a lot of the information at hand regarding what benefits vaccinations actually afford any individual. So when you want to put things in perspective, the majority of deaths from COVID-19 that are occurring worldwide are mostly occurring amongst those who are unvaccinated. I think when we're talking about this potential mandate to vaccinate those in Edo State in Nigeria, it's a complicated issue. Why? Because first and foremost, you have to determine, has the government made enough access to these vaccinations for the general public that they would want vaccinations to occur for? And the next thing that one needs to determine, has the general public been educated enough about vaccinations and the benefit of being vaccinated? I think most of those who are hesitant at this point about vaccinations, they're believing perhaps their human rights or their liberties are basically being infringed upon, but they're not really understanding the greater picture, the big picture. We've been in this pandemic situation for quite some time now, and at this point, we want to kind of normalize things and get back to our normal lives. Things are not going to get back to any sense of normalcy until we get a majority of the population vaccinated. Currently, at this point in Nigeria, there's a very low rate of vaccination. So I think the first step is really educating upon the need and the benefits for vaccines, allowing the public to understand how these vaccinations work, and allowing them to understand that these vaccinations are both safe and they work. They protect you from potentially dying. Anyone who gets this vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccination, basically it lowers the threshold, it lowers the ability of COVID-19 to potentially kill you. We all want to live, we want to move forward with our lives. So at this point, the best way forward is to vaccinate.
You know, how do we reconcile this? Because even in Europe, South America, North America, we've seen this wave of anti-vaxxers protesting where you think they've got a lot more information, they've got improved healthcare facility, but you still had that process. So how do we reconcile that?
Here's the thing, there's a lot of vaccine misinformation going on at this point. So if you are somebody that's at home sitting out there trying to figure out, are vaccinations the way forward for me? Is this something that I need to have to basically help me get through this pandemic situation? I would say speak to a doctor, speak to a medical doctor, speak to a medical expert to really get the facts. A lot of the times my patients, some of my patients here in the States that are even hesitant about vaccines, I'll have consultations with them just to even discuss with them the benefits and the need for vaccinations and how it can help their lives positively during this pandemic situation. So at the forefront of it all, education is key. Getting the facts are key. There's way too much misinformation out there that leads some of the population to believe that this vaccine is not good, it's dangerous, it's some kind of poison of sorts. I've heard so many basically false things about vaccinations that patients read on the internet. And bottom line is the sources that they have are just not accurate. I think if most Nigerians have the information in front of them, there would not even be a need for a mandate to begin with. I think most people, if they have the facts in front of them, they would want to have the vaccine without anyone imposing any kind of mandate about getting vaccinated. You know, but education, facts, information, that's a powerful tool, and that's just key at this point in the pandemic.
You know, I think one of the issues Mr. Edokpai raised is, I mean, why does it appear as though the government is forcing this down the throat, well, the jab down the arm of people, perhaps? And I think that's been a challenge. So which do you think works? Is it just information, more information, and more information? Or there still needs to be some form of coercing, some form of, if you don't do this, then you don't get access to this. Do you think that works, especially in this case, in the overall scheme of things?
I mean, in the overall scheme of things, when you've provided the general public with the facts and they're still hesitant or they don't want to move forward with it, Unfortunately, regulatory bodies, government bodies, they have no choice but to put this mandate out there. No one is being forced, but the message being relayed is stating that if you are not vaccinated, guess what? You're not going to have access to some of these public spaces that you are used to having access to. So if you want to continue moving around and having these the access to these public spaces, then please, by all means, get vaccinated. Why? Because you're protecting yourself, you're protecting others. When we continue to have this argument from the side that says this is an infringement upon my human rights, upon my civil rights, yes, it's your body, it's your choice whether or not to vaccinate. However, should you be able to potentially give somebody else a deadly infection that can kill them? I think if we want to do what's best for the country, what's best for the global community, we realize that vaccinations really are the way forward.
If I could just jump in there, but
sure.
when even those who are vaccinated, I mean, there's been several reports, and you could correct that if it's wrong, that although they've been vaccinated, they can still transmit the vaccine to those who were not vaccinated. I mean, transmit the virus.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what you're referring to is what we're calling breakthrough infections. There are cases of those who are fully vaccinated. However, they're still having infections with COVID-19. But I think we have to understand what the key point is. At this point in the pandemic, where there are all these variants, like the Delta variant surging, here's what you have to understand. If you are vaccinated, let's say you did get a breakthrough infection, guess what? The potential for you to die from that infection has been markedly reduced. When you look at the data globally, in the States, in Nigeria, those that are dying predominantly from COVID-19 are those that have not been vaccinated. So you would want to vaccinate so that you are protecting your life in the event of a potential COVID-19 infection. And that's really the bottom line at this point.
So, I mean, in terms of messaging now, because I think that has also been a major issue. So you say, well, governments are not exactly forcing people, but on the, same vein, you say, well, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't access, major things like perhaps a hospital, you can't go to stores and the rest. Isn't that one and the same? Forcing people in another way, or you think the messaging needs to change? Because I think for Mr. Edokbaye as well, he says it's the same thing, saying that people, yes, they don't have to get vaccinated, but if they need to come to work, which by the way earns them their pay, then they need to get vaccinated. So is it a challenge of messaging, or at the end of the day, we're still saying the same thing? You must get vaccinated.
Messaging is really key. Messaging is really crucial. But at the end of the day, the underlying message that I think everyone is trying to relay is that everyone wants to stay as healthy as possible and preserve their lives during this pandemic. And that's just all there is to it. We need to give everyone the opportunity to really understand what COVID-19 is, to really understand the facts about vaccinations. I think with time, when any individual actually gets the facts, gets the information that's necessary, I don't believe that there would even be this need for a mandate, because people will just want to naturally get it. The information is powerful. Once you have the information at hand, I don't think that many people would say that I don't want this vaccination that can help save my life if I had this serious infection. I think the government gets to a point whereby they have to do what is best for the general community to try to keep everyone as safe as possible. So I think it's a move in the direction to try to keep citizens of the country safe and healthy.
That appears to be where the bone of contention is, because there's a school of thought that suggests or believes that trying to compel people to take this has proven counterproductive, because they say, look at the protest, the wave of protests in Europe. As a matter of fact, it now spread to a lot more people, and they thought it makes them all the more suspicious as to allowing it just flow naturally. So does that come across as though, well, government is, what they say, in a straight betwixt two here.
Yeah, I mean, again, the issue comes down to the information and giving the public the time to digest the information. But I think the government is put in a difficult position after you've given the public enough time to digest a lot of this information, but you're still at a standstill on the vaccination rates. You're still at a point whereby there are these upticks of infections, and basically there's no end in sight to the pandemic. So what else is left to do but to put in some of these mandates to kind of guide folks in the right direction to actually keep them healthy?
So I'm seeing the vaccination rates in the US, 55% fully vaccinated. Well, way more have gotten their first dose, but fully vaccinated, you have 55%. So clearly, you still have a challenge on your hands. And I mean, you expect that a lot of people have access to information. Still, they choose to stick to their guns, as it were. Do you see this being resolved in the future? Because, I mean, we've had some time, as it were, to still get a lot of information. In fact, you have scientists who are on the front lines, as it were, still saying, well, I'm still skeptical about this. So do you think this is a conversation we'll probably keep having, I mean, for the nearest foreseeable future or the farthest foreseeable future?
So this is an ongoing and evolving situation, this COVID pandemic world that we're living in. But anyone that's a part of the medical community, the scientific world, they're going to say, yes, move forward with vaccinations. But there are going to be those in the general public that, try as you might, they are not going to want to move forward with vaccinations. So what is my job and my responsibility as a doctor seeing patients during this pandemic? All I can really do is provide my patients with the answers to the questions that they have. I continue to notice that those who have been on edge or hesitant about getting vaccinations, they've just read something false or heard something that's just wrong online or from a wrong source. And once I've taken the time to actually give them some of the facts, some patients, have actually moved towards just wanting to get vaccinated after having a medical consultation to understand what the vaccine means, what a potential infection would mean for their lives and for their livelihood. So I think it's an evolving situation, and it's just going to take time. We still have those that will never want to get vaccinated, but we have to think about, again, the better and greater good for humanity, the better and greater good for the citizens of Nigeria, the better and greater good for the international community. And that's what's key at this point, keeping us all safe and healthy moving forward, so we can hopefully have an end in sight at some point.
I'd like you to talk about, respond, if you would, to the elephant in the room. Some who see this as, just a precursor to one world government, the end of the world. I'm sure you have heard that. How have you responded to that? Because I imagine your patients also perhaps share that, mindset or that viewpoint. Is that something you subscribe to as well? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so that's something that I started to hear in the beginning of the pandemic from patients. This is the end of the world in sight. What is going on? But guess what? Every period of time, there is an issue with basically having the surge of a new kind of infection, a new illness that really hits the global community quite hard. And for us, it is this COVID-19 pandemic, this infection that's been really harming so many people worldwide. So what I let patients know that it's always an evolving situation with science. This pandemic that we're having, guess what? It's not going to be the last pandemic we have. There's going to be something else in the future that occurs. But I think the importance is learning from the past and knowing how to move forward best in the future. So there are lessons learned that we know from past pandemics. And basically, science continues to tell us that what we need to do is really help the population get vaccinated so that we can move forward with our lives. And hopefully when the next pandemic comes, when it's something new, when it's something different, we are all prepared and know what to do to kind of thrive in the world.
Oh, just one more thing before we go.
Sure.
Part of the conversation that will happen at the United Nations General Assembly today will be vaccine equity. And we know Africa is struggling. We get over 90% of our vaccines, we import all of those. What do you see happening with this virus and vaccination? Is it going to be a yearly thing moving forward? Because, some countries still take the flu jab, the Spanish flu. What do you see happening and what would your advice be to Africa?
So advice to Africa really is be open-minded about vaccinations, really listen and follow what the studies and the data show us. We don't know how long, honestly, we're going to have COVID-19 around with us. But just looking forward in regards to the future of the pandemic, we may be in a situation whereby this virus may be with us for some time, and you will need that vaccine annually. At this point in the States, we're already here talking about COVID boosters, those that are fully vaccinated, who's going to need a booster shot at this point to continue to have that protection against COVID-19. We really don't know when there's going to be an end in sight. But with that said, you have to really think about how you're going to be able to move forward in this pandemic world, if the pandemic is going on indefinitely, to keep your body, your family as healthy and as safe as possible. So my advice is, if you have questions, ask a healthcare professional, ask your doctor, listen to the data, listen to good sources, and really understand what the benefits are of vaccinations. Really understand that there's a potential and a possibility, though that we don't want to hear this, that this pandemic, the world that we live in right now, it can be like this. Things can be like this for some time. So we need to be able to adjust and be malleable to all of these changes that are occurring all the time.
Then Dr. Nesochi Okeke-Ibukwe, a physician and a health expert, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some messages coming through.
Oh, yes.
Let's go ahead.
Guess which one we'll have first? Henry. And it's on vaccination, right? And this is what Henry says. Government's approach is anti-public health, which uses convincing evidence to gently persuade and convince any naysayer, especially in a ferociously religious environment as Edo. However, making citizens to stay alive and not constituting health hazards to others is government's business. Way forward is layered multi-stakeholder consultations and letting data speak convincingly.
Well, Ayo weighs in on the same matter, said, yes, it's true that your body is yours, but your right stops where other people's right starts. If your body is infected with COVID-19 and you infect others, then you should be liable for prosecution. Oh, does it work that way?
I wonder.
When you hear men say, my body is mine, it has a different ring to it, because usually I think it was women who started that phrase, my body is mine. But let's see how matters eventually move on this one. Timi Afolabi weighs in, talking about vaccination as well, saying, using the state apparatus to force people to take COVID-19 vaccine and still denying it is funny. My concern, however, is that when will government make employment, security, poverty elimination, education, good transportation, and all other social amenities for the masses compulsory? That is Timi's point of view this morning.
I imagine millions of Nigerians just lining up behind Timmy. I second that one. Well, Chukwudi's mail is next saying, my question is, how much COVID-19 vaccine do we have as a nation? What's the percentage of vaccines available? Two questions, two short questions from Chukwudi.
Well, Yakubu Garba switches to VAT matter, says, I'm a tax admin expert from Republic of Benin. Oh, no wonder your name is spelled that way, Yakubu. Okay. I would like to invite myself into this debate. You already have now. Rethinking the VAT policy is important. According to the Treasury single account, VAT must be collected at federal level to make it advantageous for the country and make FIRs accountable.
Is it the Benin law now or the Nigerian law?
You got me confused. Okay. Because we
or
know...
the ECOWAS law? Or...
Yeah, I just wonder sometimes.
Okay. He's a tax expert, guys. Well, Kenneth Abiru has this one that, talking about VAT, he says, it doesn't bother me much who should or should not collect VAT. My greatest concern is how the monies are utilized by those in whose hands they are entrusted. The country and the people are becoming poorer and poorer. Nigeria, I join others to say, is too rich to be poor. I certainly second that particular last line. Nigeria is too rich to be poor. Yeah. Well, let's leave it there and have you ruminate on that one. Thank you so much for being a part of today's program. Thank you for your contributions and meals. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. I'm
Kayode Okikelu.
Yeah, I think Yakubu is from Republic of Benin. Maybe resident in Abuja. I think I get the point. All right. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.